Welcome back to Manga Historians Berserk. Today we're going to be starting with Berserk, chapter 281. Now in our last video, Emperor Ganishka led the Kushan army to the steps of the holy city in frustration from suffering a loss at the hands of Guts and Zod. But during the first wave of the Kushan attack, Griffith's forces appeared holding them back, killing anyone who got close to the holy sea. Also, along the cliff's edge, another army was beginning to make its move, ready to join the fight. With chaos spreading throughout the Kushan ranks, Emperor Ganishka sits on his throne, watching and waiting for his time to strike. But as the cool breeze blows over the battlefield, the third army joining the fight begins to get into position. The cavalry soldiers ride up on their horses, and once they all begin to hold up their flags, we see the flag of the Band of the Hawk. Griffith looks out over the field, and after a few shortened moments, he closes his visor, giving the order to his unit to move out. His men begin charging towards the battlefield, and before any of the Kushan have a chance to flee, the Lancer unit begins to skewer the soldiers. With Griffith's advancement, the Kushan bodies are thrown into the air with little effort, causing those watching to stare in awe at their power. A Kushan general calls out that the Lancer unit is but only a couple hundred men. They will show them the power of the Kushan's vast army. And just then, Zod lifts up a sword and axe over his head, and he lets out a bellowing roar as he charges through another Kushan unit, ripping him apart. Following behind him, Zod's demon unit jumps in, killing any Kushan soldier who managed to live from Zod's attack. At another part of the battlefield, Grunbeld slams his hammer down into the skull of an elephant, carving a way into the fight with the heavy units. As panic begins to spread throughout the Kushan ranks, Griffith continues to advance with his men, leaping over and heading to Ganishka's mobile palace. Within only a few moments, his soldiers begin to circle around the palace, not allowing any to escape. And in the throne room, a guard runs out to try and tell Ganishka to escape, but before he can even finish his sentence, his head is cut off. Footsteps are then heard as Ganishka sees him. Griffith raises his visor, and a particular fear begins to set in. This man before Ganishka is causing him to tremble, but he is a man who reigns over the largest empire in the world. As Ganishka looks at his shaking hand, Griffith tells him that it is only instinct. Instinct of a man whose body flows with the blood of hell. Ganishka gets ready to respond, but then stops, and Griffith's voice is just so pleasant and refreshing. And just being in front of him, Ganishka feels satisfied, yet also starved and thirsty. It's maddening! As the fear begins to set in, Griffith says that he looks as though he is suffering. Allow him to. And Griffith holds out his hand ready to touch Ganishka, but Ganishka screams in his mind that no, he cannot be touched by him. Everything would be for nothing. In a show of power, Ganishka releases himself to his astral form in an attempt to drive Griffith back, and he shouts that he is the great emperor of the Kushan Empire. He will overrun these lands as the conqueror of all that is above ground. He is the one who takes away. Hence, there is none who he would lose to. He is the immortal devil, and no matter what, the Hawk will burn with regret coming here. As Ganishka continues to project himself larger, Griffith tells him, for a cage, the air here is a bit stagnant, it would seem. There's a low rumble, and then suddenly the walls of the palace collapse inward as Griffith starts to lift the roof of the palace above their heads. With one heavy push, the soldiers pick the roof up and toss it to the side, exposing Ganishka's form to his army. He asks what does he think he's doing, and Griffith tells him that it smells of a tide. Ganishka wonders what he meant by that comment, and then the wind begins to pick up. It cuts through his astral form, pulling him apart, but for him to maintain his shape, he must return. At the base of Ganishka's projection, Ganishka crawls out on his hands and knees, breathing heavy for exerting his power. He looks up and he sees Griffith standing there, his hair gently blowing in the wind. His fear begins to set in and become panic. Did Griffith know his secret and summon the wind, or was it all just a coincidence? Just then, Griffith's gentle voice asks, "Can you pull your army out?" Ganishka stares, and Griffith goes on telling him, "My sword cannot touch you, however, with this wind, there will be no more projection. We cannot capture you, he who can change into mist. However, if the Emperor here were to vanish from the palace, you would not be able to regain control over your army again. That would result in a mutual stalemate. Why don't we have our final battle at the royal capital?" Ganishka lets out a low growl and then stands up, still trembling before Griffith, and he says, "Very well. The final battle will be in my demon city, and I will greet the Hawk's flight with a formation of extreme evil." The soldiers see this and they shout that that's the retreat flare. All units retreat. Kushan armies all begin turning back and fleeing, and in the center of it all, Griffith's men begin to cheer. And with those cheers, Griffith takes off his helmet, riding through the crowd. As the allied armies begin to clear a path, even they are captured by Griffith's radiant light. Owen watches Griffith ride through, thinking that this man is none other than the great Lord Griffith, the man with an aura never to be touched. The drawbridge to the holy city comes down, and walking from the gate is Farnese's father, Feretico Van Dominion. Once the two meet, Feretico says that he would like to give thanks on behalf of the Vatican for saving them, but they must know which lands does he come from. Griffith tells him that he is the Band of the Hawk and under the direct control of the royal dynasty, the Midland Liberation Army. Feretico and the others begin to ask, the Midland Liberation Army? And Griffith continues stating that they shall declare it here. They ask that all armies that stand as their distinguished citizens obey this life of theirs. For those who cannot swallow these conditions, they ask that they completely refrain from any unnecessary interference with their country. Feretico and the others stare in silence, and then one royal says that he doesn't know what this liberation army is, but these requests coming from a mere cavalry leader. Under whose authority is he pretending to be? Griffith tells him that they are presently the one and only Midland Army. Everyone begins to talk amongst themselves, having not heard that in such a long time. And Griffith goes on stating that it has been a long time, but it is fortunate for them to find them all in good health. Another royal shouts out that that is absurd. He dares state that a lord of common birth would lead the one and only regular army of Midland. Only those with a proper heritage shall lead. Locust steps forward, telling them he would like to remind them that it was they who engaged the Kushan army, not them who fled the front lines. The very basic principle behind the regular army is to defend its patriots and citizens when in a crisis. Yet another royal asks, how can this be? The sole remaining member of the royal house, Charlotte, is presently missing. They are giving a false authority. It is also rumored that this lordship was once imprisoned for the act of high treason against the crown. He is nothing more than a treacherous criminal. Griffith doesn't respond, and the royal begins to smile, stating that it would seem that his arrow flew true to its mark. But then a voice calls out, stating that it has all been a misunderstanding, and from the crowd, Charlotte rides her horse next to Griffith. Everyone's mouths drop at the sight of Charlotte, and they all begin to take their knees. She tries to go on, but her words begin to fall short of actual words, and Griffith reaches over, holding her hand. She nods, looking back at the royals, telling them to please raise their heads. All ye loyal subjects, she, Charlotte Beatrix Marie Rhodey Wyndham, hereby announces that she is the Queen of Midland, and that her betrothed, the leader of the Band of the Hawk, Lord Griffith, has been appointed as the supreme commander of the Midland Regular Army. And that is where we're going to be leaving you today with Berserk. Now I hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe to Manga Story and follow us on Twitter.